For nearly 4 years now, Westchester County in New York, it's been caught up in a lawsuit over housing discrimination. It's a matter many in the county thought would have ended back in '09 when the county settled the suit. But the issue, threats, and possible penalties to the county continue. Now, let's get a quick summary about where this was and where this is. Andrew.
Well, Rich, by law, communities that receive federal housing money have to work to analyze the factors that would block fair housing. During much of the 2000s, Westchester County did not, a fact that later became the basis of a lawsuit against the county. Facing potentially more than $500 million in penalties, the county in 2009, under previous county executive Democrat Andy Spano, settled that suit, agreeing to spend just over $50 million to build new affordable housing aimed at minority and low-income residents and to work to remove the obstacles to fair housing. Since then, the effort to build new housing units has, by all accounts, gone well. The efforts to remove fair housing obstacles, at least according to the feds, has not. Current County Executive Rob Astorino, who inherited the county's obligation to abide by that settlement when he took office in 2010, has, in the 4 years since, criticized the deal from a fairly regular basis and criticized HUD as well. He also vetoed a bill that would have forbade landlords from discriminating against people who use government vouchers to pay their rent. That veto, along with other actions, last month prompted a Justice Department threat to hold the county and the county executive in contempt, as well as a HUD threat to withhold millions of dollars in community program funding. In response, the county executive recently resubmitted the very same law he had vetoed in 2010 and has this time promised to sign it. And last Friday, HUD rejected the county's most recent attempts to comply with the settlement. It has now sent a deadline of June 10th to fix the problems or potentially lose that community funding for good. Rich?
All right. Thank you very much, Andrew. And we are joined by the man at the moment with his favorite subject, talking about this lawsuit, County Executive Rob Astorino. Rob, thank you very much for a few minutes. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Richard. Thanks for the patience, too. Obviously, the press conference at the top pushed us back a little bit. Okay. People may not realize, but in this building where we're coming to you 4 years ago, roughly, we did a debate, a couple floors up here, but we did a debate with you and then the incumbent at the time, Andy Spano. Now, I think it's pretty safe to say, when you agree, Andrew, that one of the reasons why Andy Spano lost, and our guest is here, is that lawsuit did not reflect well on him or his administration.
It was the major issue of the campaign. It took up the first third of the debate you're referencing.
And at the end of the day, he said, well, first of all, nobody made him take the money. He took the money from the feds, and with it came the strings attached. He didn't, and his administration fully acknowledged, comply with the deal. And then secondly, they even falsified records in the reporting of it to the administration. So he was dead on all accounts here, and they signed the deal in '09, consent decree, and the legislature signed it. How 4 years later we're still here talking about this? Nobody thought, and I remember even in the debate, you said you were going to abide by the agreement. So how are we at the point where you're being threatened with contempt, the county's losing money, the editorials, paper to paper here, talking about the county and racism, or certainly in unflattering terms. And then on top of that here, there's huge potential exposure, let alone taxpayers have gone in their pocket for millions fighting a lawsuit that now seems to have been, for the most part, pointless.
Well, a couple things. First of all, we are well ahead of schedule. I'm complying, as I said I would do back then, and I have continued to comply for 3.5 years now with the terms of the settlement. We are, of the 750 units that we have to build of fair and affordable housing across the county in the 31 eligible communities under this settlement, we have already 305 that are counted towards that settlement.
Nobody's debating that the units are on schedule, if not ahead of schedule.
We're ahead of schedule.
But when you say you comply, I'll list the people who say that disagree either with your argument or threatening with contempt. HUD, the U.S. Attorney, the Justice Department, federal judge, federal appeals court, federal monitor, and even the county legislature. They all aren't on the same page with you that since '09, since when you went in and took over, inheriting this from your predecessor, that you followed the terms of the agreement.
We had a disagreement on one sentence in the settlement, and it was an interpretation, and that's what we did. We followed the dispute resolution in the settlement. Now, remember, when you say HUD and Justice disagree and are making these charges, they are one party to a two-party settlement. So they're making charges and accusations that are just that, charges and accusations. So what we did was We followed the dispute resolution. I didn't think I had to sign the source of income legislation, that it was already complied with by the previous county executive. We followed that. We actually won. The federal magistrate agreed with the county that we were not in contempt, that we were complying. HUD appealed that decision. The federal district court judge overturned the decision of the magistrate, and then the appeal, the Second Circuit affirmed the district court judge. Once the district court judge ruled, that was way back in August of last year, we agreed. We said, okay, if that's the ruling of the court, then we will resubmit the legislation that you asked us to do, you ordered us to do, and I did that. And so when we appealed, though, the Second Circuit affirmed her decision. We had already done that. We were already in compliance. So that's moved on. The county board is going to vote on that in 2 weeks, I believe. The biggest issue is you have a very overreaching federal government, HUD, that is making us do things, demanding, and they've written it all out. And but here's the important thing. I want people to go to westchestergov.com and read the letters from March of this year from HUD. And in that, they say that there shall be, I need to sue the 31 communities to basically abolish zoning and the restrictions in zoning code.
Before we get into that.
But that's the issue.
I have spoken to, and I know you have, electeds, power brokers in the political scene, even on the national level, that have New York connections here. I haven't found one Republican or Democrat in the last 4 years who said at the end of the day, Rob's going to have to abide by the deal. A deal is a deal. And in the end, you're going to, they said you were going to do what you said 2 weeks ago, what you're going to do now.
Absolutely.
You're going to have to capitulate. At the end of the day, the very agreement you vetoed, you're now going to have to do.
Not the agreement, the legislation, because I didn't think that we needed to do that. That was the interpretation. A federal magistrate.
But you're going to end up having to do it.
That's not a problem. We are in compliance with that. We're going to do that.
Well,
the source of income legislation. Yeah. Well, we're already in compliance.
Well,
the county board
passed and signed, which is the obligation.
Doesn't have to be.
HUD hasn't specified that it has to be.
It doesn't have to be passed by the county board as per the settlement and as per the federal judge. It's up to the county board to do whatever they choose. Now they are going to sign they're going to pass legislation, which I will have to sign, and I will do that. The biggest issue, though, Richard, is local control.
No, you don't have to sign it. You could veto it again.
Well,
but why aren't you going to veto it this time?
Because that would put the county in contempt. Because the judge has ruled on that. So I'm not going to go against the judge's order. I'm not going to defy that. But the biggest issue is...
I don't mean to harp on this one point, but how can you be in compliance if the bill isn't passed and you don't sign it, the county's in contempt?
The county's not in contempt.
But you just said that it would be if you either don't sign the bill or if the legislature doesn't pass it.
I've reintroduced the legislation. That was the only thing that it required, is that the county executive promote it. I reintroduced the legislation as per the court. Now it's up to the county board to do whatever they're going to do.
But we went through this a couple of years ago when the same piece of legislation passed and you vetoed it. And
that was the original piece of legislation.
And they said that you were not you were not in compliance for having vetoed it, that you were not promoting the fair...
HUD made that objection, and so we went through the process. The magistrate agreed with the county that we were not in contempt, that we were in compliance. They appealed, and on appeal, the district court and the Second Circuit affirmed that we need to do this. So that's what we're doing. We're not We're not going to...
I'm sorry, because HUD's withholding $7.1 million in community grant money, which could be... That's for 2011.
Totally
There's more
separate.
For 2012, more for 2013. That's for non-compliance and source of income non-compliance.
No. Once the source of income is adopted and signed, if it is adopted by the Board of Legislators, that's their choice. This has something totally separate. HUD, by the way, is penalizing the people that they're supposed to be helping, by the way, because most of this money goes to communities that are not in the settlement, to the poorer communities that need this money. The big issue, let's get this off the plate, because nobody is arguing that we're not in compliance right now. Nobody.
I don't agree with that at all. You're in compliance about building the units. You're not in compliance about what they specifically said, which is if somebody wants to get an apartment right now and they want to use, in effect, what we're talking about right now, whatever voucher or whatever thing that's not a piece of cash, they shouldn't be prohibited from that. There's a debate about that. I'm not even going to get into who's right or wrong in the debate. But right now, we ring up HUD right now. They're not going to say, oh, yeah, the county executive, he's in our good graces, he's being compliant.
They will say he's in compliance now because he has resubmitted the legislation as per the court's order. Same thing Justice would say. We are totally in compliance.
Andrew mentioned $7+ million in annual